It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring. I have a dream today.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Savannah State University annual public program in remembrance of the life of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Tonight, we have an amazing program set out to celebrate his life and his legacy of a true American hero. Tonight, the Savannah State University community pauses to commemorate the life and legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a man who reminds us of our nation's past and of its glorious possibilities. He calls for us to renew our energy for work that remains unfinished and to recommit ourselves as individuals and as a society to the ideals of racial justice and equality. This is why this year's theme is so befitting as we reflect upon his life, times, and his legacy. This evening, we want to be reminded of the determination that it takes to make real his dream of a world where men and women would be judged solely by the content of their character.
Again. gives me pleasure to introduce tonight's guest speaker, Dr. Jamal Toure. Toure is a native of Savannah and Hilton Head Island. His family has been in the low country of Georgia and South Carolina since at least 1814 and has established a family compound since the late 1800s. He is a graduate of Savannah State University with dual degrees, cum laude, and a Walter F. George School of Law of Mercer University. Toure is called the People's Historian and the one-man NAACP. He is a resident scholar of Geechee Kunda Cultural Center and Museum in Riceboro, Georgia. He is the founder of Day Clean, the African Soul Day Clean Journey. History, cultural, and empowerment are their focus. He has performed for the Prime Minister of Haiti, the Liberian Ambassador of the United States, the Mayor of Savannah, an installment of Queen Quet. Toure is a professor at Georgia Southern University in the Department of Africana Studies and Programs in Criminal Justice. He formerly worked at Savannah State in the same capacity of Africana Studies, programs, and criminal justice programs. Ladies and gentlemen, please receive our guest speaker, Dr. Jamal Toure.
In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, we give thanks and praises to God Almighty, Lord of all the worlds, our creator, our sustainer. And we're glad to be home. It's always good to be home, always a pleasure to be back home. I would not be who I am without this great institution right here. And for many of you, it's the same thing. You will not be who you are. Because those of you who know me from 1501, you know what I've shared with you all the time. Your greatness is never achieved by yourself. Others help you to achieve greatness. It's the person who's the custodian, the person who helped you, who feeds you in the cab, the person who gave you some guidance and gave you words of encouragement back home in the neighborhood where you came from, in your family. So you are never able to go and say that you did it by yourself. Others help you to achieve. And because others help you to achieve greatness, guess what? That means that you have an obligation to reach back and help someone else. So that's what we always come home. Shed Dawson and I had a conversation years ago, in which I said to him, I said that my desire that if I knew what would be my last day on earth, if I knew what day would be my last day living, I would want to spend that last day at a place called Savannah State University, for me to sit on the marsh and watch the sun rise. And he said he had the same sentiment because, again, we understand the value of this place. And because the value of this place helped make me, again, who I am. And it's so fitting that right now for this King celebration, the theme is, it starts with you. Some others have changed it to, it starts with me. So we're 1501, and then the members of the organizations that I had the pleasure to be the advisor, and there were 11 organizations on Savannah State's campus that I advised at one time. And so I was able to see those great people, some who became SSU Man of the Year and Woman of the Year, Organization of the Year, Virtual Program of the Year, and also Volunteer Program of the Year. So it started with them, and they made that foray, that steps with regards to looking out for the community. So yes, you all understand that. And as I shared with one person, one great scholar here, Latia Carter, I said to her, I said, I have a life. And what she then said to me, she said, we are your life. And I understood that because, again, I would not be able to do what I do without them. And so that's in the 21st century. And that's a part of right now. We are here because we have an obligation to make sure that all of us succeed. And that's why it starts with me and you. But I'm going to go back in time. I'm going to go back in time in which I deal with someone who made it possible for me to be here. And all of us to be here at this great institution called Savannah State University. And I'm here right now because of someone who said, let freedom ring. Let freedom ring. I'm here because of that person. I'm here because of a person, a young lady who sat on a bus, who refused to give her a seat on the bus, who said she will no longer tolerate sitting to the back of the bus solely. I'm here because of people who said that it is about the NAACP, the great civil rights organization. Again, I'm here because of them. I'm here for some people who said that they had a dream for freedom to ring throughout, but also freedom to not touch, make sure that there was no food insecurity. Yeah, that this was a place for food security. And so again, I am here because of that. I'm here to celebrate those who made it possible for us to go to another level, to soar to the skies. That's why I'm here. And so for me, I go back in time. I go back in time to the man who I call the greatest professor in the history of Savannah State University. His name is Dr. Haynes Walton Jr., my mentor. Haynes Walton taught us in political science. He taught us about Dr. King. Oh, Dr. Walton was called the expert on Dr. King's political philosophy. So that's what we got at Savannah State University. We understood about Dr. King. So now some of you in 1501, you know I have shared with y'all, I detest the I Have a Dream speech. I detest the speech because it's a speech that is filled with propaganda for people today who now are focused on symbolic victories for us and not tangible victories. They can say, I have a dream, and that's all it's about, a dream, but not a reality. Dr. Walton taught us about this. And so for some of you, you know what I tell folks. I tell people the speech that I love by Dr. King, one of them is why I oppose the war in Vietnam. Dr. King talked about that where people are experiencing pain, no matter where they are in the world, it is a problem for all of us. And we must be there to help alleviate the pain of everyone. It starts with you. It starts with me. We go forward with regards to changing this world. So that is the speech that I tell folks we must be about. Not I have a dream. Because again, other people have not shaped it and changed it into something that is not supposed to be about. But yeah, as I said, I am here right now because of a young lady who refused to give up her seat on the bus. And I marvel at that fact that I was able to walk in the soil of her. This same soil that my father on a Sunday afternoon dropped me off at Wiley Wilcox's gymnasium. And there I met my first friend from Atlanta, Georgia at Savannah State, Clovis Treat Terrell. And so we're right there, but now I'm not thinking about, again, this great young lady. Oh, you thinking Rosa Parks? No. It's an African-American young lady, unnamed young lady. Excuse me, I need to say this. An African-American young man. And actually, it was about 45 of them who went downtown Savannah and got on the buses in downtown Savannah, and they refused to give up their seats on the bus. That's before Rosa Parks. That's a part of the legacy. That's why I go and say, wow, I'm a part of this environment right here. I'm a part of this sacred soil right. They did that before Rosa Parks. Oh, and you know about the man who said, let freedom ring, let freedom ring? You're thinking Dr. King. No, it is Major Richard R. Wright. The first federal holiday in the United States was inspired by our first president. It is not Dr. King's day. It is not Juneteenth. It is National Freedom Day. Our first president said, let freedom ring throughout this entire country, the freedom for all people. Our first president, Richard R. Wright. And I said, I am now on the soil of a man who said, let freedom ring, long before Dr. King. And it started with him, and he then gave it to me. As I told his great-granddaughter, Dr. Carolyn Jordan, I said that I am a descendant of Richard R. Wright because I want to make sure that freedom will ring for everyone. And so, yes, I pay homage to him. But guess what happened? He would not be able to live to see the day of National Freedom Day. But there's a woman who works with him to make sure that it is seen and that it manifests itself. And I love her too because she's tied to a place called Savannah, Georgia. Savannah, Georgia, this woman, her name is Mary McLeod Bethune. The president, one of the co-founders of Bethune-Cookman University. She carried the dream of our great president, Major Richard R. Wright, to Washington, D.C. that then she saw National Freedom Day signed. That's what it was like, that you had a partnership occurring right here. A partnership that, again, is about excellence. Oh, wait a minute. The NAACP connected here also? Connected here that to a freshman class at Savannah State, Georgia State College. Georgia State College, oh, no. Let me rewind. Because at one time, there were only 2 black towns, all black towns in Chatham County, Georgia. One is called Burroughs. The other one is called Industrial College, Georgia, now known as Savannah State University. An all-black town with a black mayor that, again, the dream was fulfilled by our first president, with the first president being Cyrus G. Wiley from Hilton Head Island. And so with regards to that legacy of the NAACP, that the freshman class at Savannah State University, or Georgia State College at the time, they will write a letter to one of the black men who was said to be the greatest influence on black people around the entire world in the 20th century. See, I've gone from the 21st century with regard to the great scholars here today to the homage to the people from the 20th century. And two people, Dr. Shea Anthony Jope, and the other one is Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. The freshman class at Savannah State would send letters to Dr. Du Bois. They would celebrate him on his birthday and talk about his inspiration for them. The freshman class at Savannah State or Georgia State College. That's what they did. Because Dr. Du Bois would come here and he saw young people here at Savannah State or Georgia State at the time. He would see them working and engaging with regards to the fight for human rights. He will also see the professors, the faculty members right here for human rights, fighting for human rights, and seeing the staff fight for human rights right here. One of them is who I call the grandfather of the Black Lives Matter. Oh, Savannah State people, you don't realize that the grandfather of the Black Lives Matter movement was right here on the soil that we now walk upon. His name is Dr. Monroe Work, brought here by Major Richard R. Wright. Dr. Work would be the one to expose the disparities that were happening right here. And, the great-grandmother, her name is Ida B. Wells, but that's another story for another day. But back to the freshman class being inspired by the man we know, Dr. Monroe Work and W.E.B. Du Bois. And Du Bois is so influenced and so mystified by what's happening here at Savannah State that he says to Dr. Monroe Work and to Major Richard R. Wright, I need you all to support my movement. I need you all to be advocates for my movement that I'm calling the Niagara Movement, that some of y'all know is the predecessor of the NAACP. So the birth of the NAACP is tied intimately here to Savannah State. And so he asked for Monroe Work and Major Richard R. Wright to support his movement, and they will support the movement, and it springboards into the NAACP. I'm here also because of the NAACP, because there is a woman who worked right here at Savannah State, a staff person at Savannah State, who went on a human rights tour in the early 1900s. Most people don't realize that. A woman who worked at Savannah State, a postmistress here at Savannah State by the name of Valoria Gilbert, who I call the mother of the NAACP in the state of Georgia. She went on a human rights tour in the early 1900s. See, the day we talk about human rights, some of y'all talk about civil rights, but people don't realize that at Savannah State, we understood it was more than civil rights. It was about human rights. And Valoria Gilbert is right here to inspire young people and other staff persons here and other people throughout the state of Georgia to not stand up and look out for all of us. In fact, people talk about that when she went to the small towns in Georgia, into territories that were filled with the Klan, that she went there by herself to not start memberships of the NAACP. Her husband had one part of the state, she had the other part. And some men said that we will get her to a certain point on the county and then let her go on her way back to Savannah. So I'm here because of Valoria Gilbert, the mother of the NAACP in the state of Georgia, but also a human rights worker that went around the entire country. I'm here because I'm here also for a man who fought for and made sure that we would have food security. Some of y'all think about food insecurity, not understanding that Savannah State was one of the proponents for food security in the early 1900s. And that man is a man by the name of George Washington Carver, tied to a man by the name of Major Richard R. Wright. Even later on, Benjamin Huber, the president here at Savannah State, will be an advocate for that also. But right here, do you not have African people, Mary McLeod Bethune and others now coming here and understanding the importance of agricultural sciences and having food security for African people and all people in this country? So I'm here because, again, they walked on this sacred soil. They went to a place called Hill Hall. I marvel at that. Then I continue my sojourn, that I go and then realize that here at Savannah State University, that we were the ones who were the leaders of not educating young people on how to be activists with regards to having social justice. Yes, right here, James Brown, not the singer James Brown, but one of our great scholars here, goes forward to now guide people throughout the entire country on how young people can be the ones to change the world. That's something that Dr. King talked about. So I marvel at that, and then I go and think how we went to the skies. And I think about those African people, those young people at Savannah State, those young scholars at Savannah State who were in a place called Hurdy Hall, who now are the reason why when you see people going to the skies right now with NASA and all of this, now understand that it was a fight that was led by them. Also for us now to say African people, we have the engineering and the mathematical skills that we can now help this country now go to the moon and go to the skies. Some of us don't realize that. but it is the movement and it's the fight to show that African people excel in all academic areas. And so I'm here because those mathematicians out of a place called Hurdy Hall. I stand here right now reflecting back with regard to the death of Bishop Desmond Tutu. Some of you know about the experience in South Africa where you have a minority of Caucasians who are now controlling the entire government there in South Africa and the lands. They control all the wealth, and here you have millions of black folks who are impoverished. And Desmond Tutu, and I got to throw out there, Steve Biko, Winnie Mandela, Nelson Mandela, PNC, ANC, they will be the ones that will now go and fight on behalf of trying to bring about parity and equality. And they say they were inspired by the human rights movement that was in the United States that is tied to a place called Savannah State University that we don't give credit to, but I must give credit to and say human rights activity going on, civil rights movement going on here in Savannah, Georgia that inspired people around the entire world that's tied to our legacy. But back to what we see in South Africa. A Savannah State alum by the name of Nadra Nia Enzi, who's doing the work in New Orleans right now as a community activist. He said to me, he said, do you remember our protest, our march at Savannah State? And it was sobering, I reflected back. Because what happened? You have a Dutch board, South African official to come to Savannah State. A professor brought him here. And we sat up and said, wait a minute. Here it is, African people from around the entire country, Caucasians around the entire country, Asian people around the entire country are now gathering saying that we must fight against the system of apartheid in South Africa. But we're not bringing someone here to Savannah State to not tell us as African-American college students that is okay to have a system like that when our ancestors had just fought against the system of Jim Crowism, of discrimination and segregation, but you bring him here to Savannah State. So we sat in the office of a professor by the name of Bim P. Anke in Hurdy Hall. And we sat there and we said, that will not happen at Howard University. And I was the person who said that they will not bring them to Howard, but they bring them to Savannah State because they think that we're not aware. And we sat there and said that we're going to show them that we are aware. And so what we then taught the student organizations here on the campus said that we should not allow this man to talk to us and justify a system of oppression. Because Dr. King has said to us, oppression anywhere in the world is oppression for all of us. And so at the same time, being an officer in student government, the vice president, we had now brought onto campus, or we're going to have to speak on campus, the first black woman appointed to the Board of Regents. So it's, again, a slap in the face to us at Savannah State to have someone now talking about segregation where we have saw elevation for us with regards to education here in the state of Georgia. So what happened? We talked to student organizations and we then went down there to Kennedy Auditorium and the man was there talking. And we had told folks that when I stand up, everyone will walk out of Kennedy Auditorium. And that was the plan that we had hashed. We had taught the student leaders, organizations here on the campus. And when I then got up and I walked out of Kennedy Auditorium, I then turned around to look when we were on the outside to see the rest of my classmates with me. And looking, I didn't see Dr. Ifikon Simon, a progressive medical doctor and farmer in the Greenville and Spartanburg, South Carolina area. Then I also see Vincent Mustafa Saad Brown, who was a basketball player for the Savannah State basketball team. And there's no one else outside of Nadra Nia Enzi. No one else, is just us outside. Because we thought that everyone was now going to leave out because we are not going to support this oppression. And so Ifikon then said to me, he said, Jamal, and Ifikon is from the Virgin Islands. He said, Jamal, what are we going to do? I said, we're going back inside. See, initially, our protest was one and our march was one of silence. Silence. But this time we saw that again because of fear, that some people had a fear and were not embracing the Savannah State that we knew. We then said we had to go back inside more determined. So we walked back inside, Ifikon with one sign in his mouth saying, Free South Africa, and signs in his right hand and left hand. And Mustafa Saad Brown, being 6 feet 8 tall, he's walking back in and I'm leading the way and I'm saying, Free South Africa, Free South Africa. And we marched directly to the front of the stage in Kennedy Auditorium. And I tell folks, we should not listen to this man who's giving us lies to justify the wrongs and the crimes against our people. We must stand up and fight for South Africa because those are our brothers and sisters. And Ifekan stand on the side and Mustafa right there on the side also. And I say we need to leave out of here. And right now today, we have the first black woman who is on the Board of Regents. And we need to go down to Wiley Wilcox and hear her being put on by the Student Government Association. Free South Africa. And when we walked out, guess what? Everyone had walked out. No longer afraid of the professors, their faculty members who had said they need to be there for their class. They now all came outside, and what was so amazing, they started giving high fives, saying, we did it, we did it. So Ifekan, Nadra, and Mustafa and I looked at each other like, wow. They're now saying we did it, and that was fine. But that was not the most important part. Vincent Brown, Mustafa Saad, he then said to me, he said, Ak, which means brother. He said, they say that one person cannot change the world. He said, but on this day, that's a lie. He said, I realized that one person can change the world. And I looked at him and I said, you're right. Because on that day right there, we saw that it started with us. It started with him. It started with me. It started with Naj. It started with Ifekan. It started with everyone. It started with us to now make a change. And that's why for this Dr. King celebration, the theme is fitting for all of you. It starts with you to change your environment, to change your community, to better your community. Yes, it starts with you. And that is the legacy of Savannah State. We have changed the world. We have changed the world. And we must make sure that everyone hears about our great institution, how we have changed the world. That's our story. And that's what we live by. We are Savannah State.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. God